Hi, my name is Melinda Steinlongi, and I am a Morningside graduate student, also working on my special ed consulting license. I currently work in the second grade special education teacher in Owine at Wings Park Elementary and have been in that capacity for the past 17 years. I did a research study on implementing computer-based instruction and the effects that that had on struggling second grade readers, and I'm going to present that to you today. Lexia is a reading program that's computer-based that students work independently on. And that was something that our school district 2 years ago decided to implement for all of our learners, K through 5. And so that is how I decided to study this to see if it's really as beneficial to my special education students as the company claims. There is quite a large achievement gap at Wings Park in between the special education and the general education students. And so I was hoping to see if that achievement gap was decreased by implementing some computer-based instruction. I used fluency scores, which is words per minute, to see the difference between the general education and the special education students and how wide the gap was, as well as using performance predictors within the Lexia program to determine the effectiveness of the program in decreasing the achievement gap. Struggling readers we're always looking for appropriate interventions and most effective interventions to use with these students. And so computer-based instruction is something that's kind of coming and has been coming in the past few years and seems to be beneficial to a lot of students. So I wanted to see if it is just as beneficial or more so for our struggling readers than our gen ed readers. All right, the past research on computer-based instruction, it provides immediate feedback, which is a huge plus. It also expedites the rate of learning due to the program being able to determine quickly what instructional level the individual student is on. It provides differentiation for the teacher. All students are working at their instructional level and working on skill deficits that they have. So that is definitely a benefit. In 2001, Satcher did a study about providing multiple learning modes for students to practice skills, and that showed a dramatic boost in achievement for all learners. And so the technology being able to adjust to the path that the learner needs is very beneficial. The National Mathematics Advisory Panel, in 2008, did a study on data-driven instruction, so where the teacher is focusing on interventions in the area that will do the most good. And the Lexia program provides this data-driven instruction and interventions for the students. So that was something that would be definitely a benefit. One study analyzed kindergartners who were given a reading test at the pre-reading level, working on comprehension and phonological awareness and letter sound correspondence. And Markaris, I believe is how you say his name, in 2008, did a study that showed low-performing students that were in computer-based instruction classrooms and just had a lot more opportunities with computer-based instruction, showed much greater gains than those students that did not have that available to them. Some gap in the research would be that the student engagement is a huge piece in computer-based instruction. So those students that are engaged in the learning, that are continuing to do the program as it's suggested, had a huge impact. But there isn't a lot to show, how implementing that technology enhances reading skills with students with disabilities. So, it kind of does the whole program as a whole, and there's a lot of good research out there, but it doesn't really focus on those struggling learners. So, when implementing 60 minutes of computer-based instruction, more specifically the Lexia program, per week with struggling learners, I hypothesized that it would not increase the rate that these learners acquire new skills compared to their peers. I predicted that the achievement gap would remain unchanged due to each group making their own gains in their reading achievement. So my struggling learners would not expedite their learning to catch up to their peers. The significance of the study was to determine the effectiveness of spending classroom time away from direct instruction with the teacher and more time on computer-based instruction, as well as the effectiveness of Lexia for my struggling learners and struggling learners everywhere. So I wanted to really see, are they making more gains than their counterparts who are not struggling in reading when they're all given the same programming. Okay, so the purpose was to determine if Lexia's claims of being more beneficial to struggling readers than general education readers rang true. I don't know. I would have loved to have that happen. I think we're all looking for that silver bullet that's going to help our struggling learners. But I wanted to see it for myself. So that's why this study was done. Class time is starting to be devoted more to computer-based instruction such as Lexia. So I wanted to know, is this a good use of our instructional time? You know, are our students making those gains and benefiting from these computer-based instruction programs? And was Lexia a sound intervention to close the achievement gap? So is this where, you know, we put all our eggs in one basket? Is this where we are going to show that these students really are benefiting and making some huge gains? So I did an A/B research design. Wings Park, let me give you a little background. We have in the district, we have 1,425 students K-12, and 67% of these students are free and reduced. So we have a large SES population, and a lot of students come to us with very little reading skills when they enter school. 9 of my special education students were used for this study, and 68 general education students were used. So in our district, the special ed students consist of 16% of our total population. And they were considered to be in my experimental group if they had IEPs addressing reading deficits. We used the iPad Airs, which were one-to-one with students, so each student had their own prescribed intensity of the Lexia program. So the Lexia program would say, okay, this special ed student needs 60 minutes per week with our Lexia program to reach second grade skills, where a student who is already reading at second grade might only have 10 minutes of prescribed intensity minutes through the Lexia program. So those intensities were used every week for the 20 weeks to determine how much time they needed to be spending on the computer-based instruction of Lexia. Fast assessments, which is a 1-minute grade level probe, reading probe, just a story, a passage. Those were also used to determine if the achievement gap was remaining the same, decreasing, or increasing. And there is a lot of research out there saying that the more fluent the reader is, the more comprehension they're able to do. So the higher their fluency rate, usually their comprehension comes right along with that. So that's why the FAST test was used. And then also the Lexia program provides individual lessons targeting skill deficits, and those were also used within the first 3 days of being flagged as needing some extra intervention with the teacher. So those were also provided. All right, so what did I find? I found that on the performance predictors, as I went along, I found that maybe that wasn't the best way to determine how much reading is actually happening. So it just says a performance predictor is, okay, this student, Mindy Steinlage, her performance predictor is 87. So I have 87% possibility that I will get to the end of second grade skills by the end of second grade in the Lexia program. If I had a 10% performance predictor, that would mean that I had a 10% chance of getting to the end of second grade skills by the end of second grade. So my special education students, in the fall, their standard deviation was 34.6. So their performance predictor was 21.5. So 21% chance that they're going to get to the end of second grade skills by the end of second grade. And in winter, that went up about 4 to 25. The general education students had about the same increase. So in the fall, they had 66%, and they went up about 4 to 70%. So it was kind of hard to determine, was this, a really good way of predicting how the students are doing as far as their achievement gap. Let me see here. So the general education and the special education students increased about the same. So I went on to fluency rates. So they're 1 per minute read. Special education students in the mean started at 13.1, and in the winter they went up to 22.3, which was an increase of about 9 words per minute. The general education students started at 73.8 words per minute, and they had a pretty significant jump. They went up 30 words per minute in just a few weeks. So the results, all students made gains. They all increased their words per minute. They all got closer to grade level expectations. If this rate would continue, the computer-based instruction used, it was not significant enough to close the achievement gap. So the gen ed students continued to make more gains than the special education students, even with the Lexia program in place. Vaughn and Wangzek states that intensive interventions must be in place for several years, and they even spoke to such as 7 years, 6 or 7 years, to determine if the progress is really being made because of this specific program. So this computer-based instruction, I would say, was not significant enough. It didn't decrease that achievement gap in between the two groups. So as far as the validity of the test, there were some limitations. Narrow sample size, so I just used second grade students. They were limited to just second graders, and I would like to follow these students through several years of using the Lexia program. This was their second year, and we are anticipating using it again next year. It has been purchased for our school. So it would be really fun to do a longer study as far as, follow these students up through 6th grade and when they're still using the Lexia program. The group sizes between the general education and the special education students were pretty significantly different. I had 68 students in the general education group, and there were only 9 in the special education group. So that made it a little bit difficult, and as if I were to do it again, I would pick maybe, 9 students to compare with in the gen ed group to compare with the 9 students in the special education group. Diversity was pretty limited. Most of the students were Caucasian, and they all came from low socioeconomic backgrounds. They were all in the free and reduced lunch category. And classroom instruction, we have 5 different second grade teachers. So the instruction that they're getting in the classroom, some had a lot of computer-based instruction, some had very little or none other than the Lexia program. So it would be interesting to see how each individual teacher and what they're doing with the students to differentiate learning also played a factor into this. And the most noteworthy limitation would probably be the general education population had smaller gains to make to get to proficiency, to get to the 100% performance predictor than their struggling counterparts. So in reality, the special education students had a lot better chance of making big gains because they started so much lower. So like on the words per minute, they had a good chance of increasing quite significantly, where